All right, this is like a continuation of the last episode when we're talking about coaching and experience and age group and sports. And I'm just wondering, for the coaches out there, anybody really, I guess, is there a certain age where the coach who's going to be working with the athletes, that there should have some type of experience, maybe a stronger background in that specific sport when coaching youth athletes? So for example, I'm going to be coaching my son's 8-9-year-old football team. I had to take a course to be able to volunteer and do that. My competitive experience is from high school, from over 20 years ago, but I'm going to be able to coach. But if there are coaches that have never coached football and never played football, and they want to coach football, doesn't matter what age group they start at in order to achieve a specific goal. So I would probably not get a varsity head coaching football job because I don't have experience. But at what age and at what level does that experience start to matter? So at the youth level, doesn't matter if the coach has never coached before. If you're coaching at a public school or a high school in New York State, for example, probably won't get hired as a varsity coach if you've never been a coach before in the system or you have no prior experience. So I guess what I'm saying that is a varsity football coach probably won't get hired if they don't have some type of demonstrated level of experience and expertise in the field, in the profession. But when does that matter, or when should that start to matter? Does it matter at all? That's just interesting because we were talking yesterday in our coaches roundtable about how a lot of the coaches were just asked to coach the throwers because there's nobody else to coach throwers. So the two people on the call, no experience with track and field ever, have started developing a really solid foundation, coaching philosophy and style that is starting to produce really good athletes across the Midwest and the East Coast. And they started because their children wanted to throw. Football's a little different maybe, or maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe I'm putting it in a box unfairly. But with youth coaching, say track and field, for example, if you coach 8-9-year-olds, does it really matter if you've ever had any competitive experience before? Since the focus should be on teaching fundamentals, making sure that kids are having fun and they're engaged and they're safe and it's a healthy environment for them. But at what point do you think, does our community or our society feel as though you need to have some type of experience or a certain level of demonstrated experience to work with a specific age group in a specific sport? So I'm just using football as an example because that's what I'm close to now. But like I said, I've never coached youth football, never coached youth athletes at that young. I was a classroom teacher, so I had that experience. But for the other, majority of coaches who are going to step onto the field for the first time this year, with their kids, their sons, their daughters, what have you, grandchildren, at the youth level, doesn't matter. So I don't know. What do people think about that? If I wouldn't feel as comfortable or as efficacious coaching swimmers and divers, at least at the high school level, right? At the varsity level. I probably wouldn't get a job at the high school level coaching that specific sport, not having had experience. Or, like I said, football, or maybe basketball, or baseball, or softball, or lacrosse. But is there a point where we think you're starting to work with 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids, you probably need to have some type of demonstrated experience to be able to work with this group of athletes because it's a little bit more serious now, air quotes, serious, at the middle school level, 7th and 8th grade. But is it though? I don't know. I think it's really interesting to have, the conversation about it and like try and figure out what works well and what might not work well, just because of, I don't know, the situation at hand, I guess, right? Like, I was going to try and make this short video, but now this is turning into another longer podcast episode. Well, let me try and frame it again. I know I've done it like 3 times in this video. When working with youth athletes, does the competitive experience and knowledge of the coach matter depending on the sport that they're coaching? And if it matters, if people think it matters, when should it matter? At what age should a coach have a demonstrated level of competence and experience and expertise in the sport that others around them feel comfortable with that specific coach leading a team? So the example, football. I've never coached football before. I'm going to be coaching my son's youth team, 8-9 years old. I had to take a course from USA Weightlifting, or USA Football rather. But I played like 20 years ago. So I probably wouldn't have the right experience to coach a varsity football team. But would that matter? Like, if I don't have prior coaching experience at the modified or JV or varsity level, would it be that big of a deal if I'm able to hire an offensive and defensive coordinator, or if I'm able to put game plans in place? If I'm not, calling all the offensive plays, or if I'm not calling the defensive plays, does it matter? Does strategy come into play? Does any of that come into play? I don't know. Just interesting discourse, I guess, because when I first asked our club president if I could volunteer, the first thing he asked me was, well, what's my experience with coaching football? And I said none, but I played. And he said, okay, that's great. Okay. So having the playing experience is important. He didn't ask if I was good or not. I don't know if that should matter. Maybe it should. And then what about at the age group? So when should it, if it should, matter for coaches? Like, is there a certain age, middle school, modified, where the coach hired should have some type of level of competence and experience working with that age group, or just experience in general, where a school is going to feel more comfortable hiring them for that position, as opposed to somebody else who's never coached football before, or insert any sport, and instead of somebody who does. So I don't know. It's just interesting. I mean, I see it in a lot of professions, like classroom teachers, like a lot of jobs out here in Western New York. People apply, people who have never taught before, others who have a wealth of experience. And I know the philosophies of certain superintendents of, we got to hire someone who's taught 4th grade before. And then others that are like, we're going to put the person that we feel is best into that classroom that's going to best help our children. And I've seen it firsthand. A lot of those teachers in some school districts are brand new. They've never taught before, and it's going to be their first foray in elementary or middle high teaching. Where others, if you have lower or less than, 3 or 4 or 5 years teaching experience, you go to the C pile or the B pile. And then those that have more experience go to the top. So it's based on years of experience. When I was at BOCES, Erie 2 BOCES, our assistant superintendent was more focused on GPA. So I don't know how I made it through. But if you didn't have at least a 3.5, you went to the B pile, 3.5 GPA. So all the people under that didn't even get a look until the first round of interviews with the potential candidates who had higher than 3.5 GPA. Now, I don't know if having a high GPA in your LED or secondary ed program is necessarily going to make you better equipped to be an effective classroom teacher compared to the teacher who got a 3.3 GPA. Because really the difference is like earning an A and an A minus, or an A and a B plus in the same course, which maybe you're a better multiple choice test taker. I don't know. But I don't know if that, should matter. I mean, some people might think it should, others might not. I'd rather interview people and get a sense of things besides looking at their GPA, but that's what she was most fixated on. And then sometimes it worked out and sometimes it didn't. So I've rambled enough with this second part here of experience and coaching, and at what age of the athlete should the coach's experience matter? Should it be, should it influence the decision to hire or ask for that volunteer based on prior competitive experiences, or not? At the youth level, maybe it doesn't so much as at the varsity level. Why is that? Does that extra experience with any sport make that much of a difference? Just want to hear your thoughts. Thanks very much for listening to this bonus episode of the Force Athletics Life and Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Charles Inferna. Have a great day.